the Bringing Business to Retail podcast with today's guest, Mike Williams from UShip.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. With Christmas just a few days away, hands up who's feeling a little bit overwhelmed and perhaps haven't got all of their Christmas shopping done yet, haven't got the Christmas dinner sorted. That's me. If you're watching the video, that is me with my hand up. It feels like Christmas just jumps upon us. Every single year, I kind of get caught unawares that Christmas is just a few days away. And let's be honest, I know 365 days in advance when it's going to be, but life can just get in the way, right? And this is the busiest time of year for all of us. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've gone from Christmas party to Christmas party, and I don't even work in an office. All of my team are remote, but between school Christmas parties and the gym Christmas party and the street Christmas party and Cubs Christmas party, even though it's a fantastic opportunity to catch up with everybody, it can be a little bit exhausting, right? It's not just me, right? Surely. And as we head into a time when hopefully you're going to at least get a few days off where you can relax and unwind and eat some gorgeous food and hang out with people that you love, today I want to share with you this cool company that I found. And you can just put this one in the back of your mind to get ready for 2019 because it may just be a game changer. Now, as for what my family's doing at Christmas, we are heading down the south coast of New South Wales to our holiday house, which if you've been listening for a while, you know that 2 years ago we bought at about this time and renovated, and now we rent it out on Airbnb. In fact, maybe that's an episode that I'll do. I know it's a little bit different, but people are always asking me when I meet them in person, how is the Airbnb going? So maybe one day we'll do an episode on what it's really like to run an Airbnb. Anyway, we have booked our own house out for Christmas, and this is the first time ever that I haven't been around family at Christmas time. So our family is quite small. There's only about 14 of us, with there's my dad and my brother and his kids and my sister and her kids and my auntie and uncle and her kids. There's not that many of us all together. And so we generally do our Christmas on Boxing Day because everybody's grown up now and they have their own families. So we let them have that time with their families, and then all of our family gets together on Boxing Day. But even though that's the case, I kind of have my second family, which is my neighbours. They're the family that you choose, right? They're the ones that you have to live with every single day. And every year, my next door neighbours and I tend to gather and have Christmas together. So this year is going to be a little bit different. In fact, it's going to be a lot different for us because there's just going to be Ed and Lana and myself, and I'm pretty sure we're going to spend most of the day at the beach. So fingers crossed for beautiful weather. There's going to be no big Christmas dinner. I'm just going to put together some cold meat and some cheese and maybe some seafood for Ed, and we're just going to be very, very chilled. The big Christmas dinner will come the following week, and all of my family is heading back to our house here in Sydney for the annual Christmas family dinner. So even though I'm going away, I won't be missing out on the traditional family Christmas dinner. It's just going to be a little bit later than normal. And of course, once I get back from the South Coast, I only have another 10 days before I'm jetting off over to New York to meet all of you amazing retailers at the live event and hopefully at the National Retailers Federation Big Show. Now, just quickly, before we jump into today's episode, a couple of people have messaged me asking me, what is the Big Show? It is held by the National Retailers Federation, which obviously supports not only enterprise businesses and big box stores, but also independent retailers like you. And it is a free exhibition and conference for retailers. Now, you can grab a free ticket if you head on over to, just Google the NRF Big Show, and you can grab a free ticket if you're a retailer to the exhibition side of the show. But if you want to go and see the speakers, that is a paid section. But if you are in New York, I highly recommend that you head on over because there are a lot of exhibitors. I think I read there are 700 exhibitors. And it is a great chance to look at what you could implement in your retail business in this new year, in this upcoming year, to help you grow. Plus, you'll get to hang out with some really nice people. You'll find some fantastic people. Just have a conversation with the person who's speaking next to you. And if you are going to be at the big show, make sure that you send me an Instagram DM or a Facebook message and we can catch up and have a chat. All right, so let's jump into today's episode with Mike Williams from UShip. Now, I heard about this company, which we kind of describe as like the Uber of logistics, and logistics just being freight transport. So if you have a store with big bulky items, sofas, any type of furniture, big light fittings, pieces of artwork, and you're wondering how you can get it across the country at an affordable rate without actually having to sign up to an expensive contract with a transport company, then this episode is for you. And I do believe it could be a game changer because maybe you've been avoiding stocking those big items because you haven't been able to figure out how to get them to your customers, especially if you are e-commerce. And with that in mind, and with this concept of growing our businesses in 2019, let's jump into this week's episode with Mike Williams from UShip. Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I always struggle when it comes to shipping big items. I know so many of my clients have issues with things just as simple as decent sized light fixtures because the general post system or general couriers can't actually guarantee that they're going to get there in one piece or even take them in the first place. I know here in Australia, our Australia Post won't do anything more than a metre. So that's 3 feet. So if you've got a really tall lampshade that doesn't come down into pieces, you're kind of screwed when it comes to getting it to your customer. So I brought along Mike Williams from UShip to talk about how we can get those big pieces of inventory to our customers in a really quick way and in a way that means that they're going to arrive safely. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Selena. Great to be here. And, one thing I would just add from the start is you're not alone. We actually just completed some third-party research, and one of our data points that came back confirms that 26% of shoppers say it's more stressful to buy an oversized gift than a parcel-sized gift. The challenges and anxiety.
That's not even the retailers, that's the shoppers.
Right, that's the end consumers. We're more stressed out about buying something that's big and bulky because it doesn't have that certainty of the in the US, the post office or the post in Australia.
Yeah, and it was one of the reasons why we used to have in my store a product that came is like a bulk pack, and it came in quite a big box. And the only way we could send it was with one particular courier, which luckily was quite affordable. But I know, especially in things like homewares, you have a big table or you have a lounge suite. And if you're not a department store or a furniture chain and you don't have your own logistics with a transport company, getting that out is just, it's almost impossible. But you know that there are good margins on these products. So you're kind of stuck with only being able to sell it if you're in a retail store to someone who's local who can come in with a pickup truck and take it themselves.
Yes, and I think what retailers want today and consumers want, retailers want to access consumers everywhere, and consumers want to be able to access merchandise that is not just in their local radius, but rather it can be anywhere nationally or internationally. And we can talk a little bit about some of those examples that we're helping enable.
Well, why don't we jump into those? Because I know that maybe we can start before we can go into the logistics part. Even just like prepping. So how would you suggest, because obviously let's go with a really big light shade because it's quite light. So you're not going on weight because then we get into things like cubic volume and it comes in a box. Is the box that it comes in just enough to be shipping it with?
Well, I think that's where, what we really rely on. So a little bit of a background on UShip. So we're here in Austin, Texas. We're a little more than 200 employees here in Austin. And we've been at this for 14 years. We're a technology marketplace that makes it possible for people that need to ship things to connect with carriers that have space available in their trucks. We're a little bit of the Airbnb of legit, what Airbnb is to travel and tourism is what we are to logistics.
So here in Australia, we call that an aggregator.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's
if
that
people have
term
heard
works.
that term in Australia, you have like a logistics aggregator, and they will go out to the courier companies and the transport companies, and they kind of help you do. It sounds very similar to what you're doing.
Well, we actually enable folks to be a little bit more self-service and very much digital technology first. So the business that has something they need to ship, they can list it on UShip. A carrier can grab that on UShip, confirm it. Goods are picked up, goods are delivered. Nobody has to do any phone calls.
Oh, wow.
UShip
That's
sits in
awesome.
the middle, and we can provide service if there's any type of exceptions. But
Hmm.
we're really trying to enable a very seamless, efficient process. And that's where we specifically have been helping e-commerce retailers with large and bulky items. We give them the ability to have a fixed price in checkout for a consumer. And then that's a fixed offer price out to these transporters. And it's a network of transporters that are all feedback rated. And they can grab that listing, and they will back their truck up to the origin, wherever the item is, and then deliver it to the destination, into the customer's home, into the room of choice.
That is awesome. Congratulations. I didn't realize you went to that extent. I thought you just did the matching, but it's so much more than that. So that is just, I don't know, it's a bit of a mind-blowing thing for me because I don't know that we have anyone in Australia who does that. So automatically I'm just thinking for my American clients that we need to talk.
So your question about, how do you prep the item? What's unique about our system is that every shipment is feedback rated. So a transporter, from the minute they sign up to be the person that's going to pick up an item and deliver it to a customer, they have all the motivation in the world to deliver world-class service at the front end. So making sure that if it's in a box, is that suitable for packing, or does it need extra blanket wrap? How does it need to be tied down in a truck? What type of ratchet straps or whatever will they have? And then when they get to the destination, making sure that they are, they're going to want to put booties on their feet. If it's an in-home delivery, they're going to wear gloves and make sure they have a professional appearance. Because again, similar to that Airbnb example, ratings and reviews are critical. And
Yeah.
so these transporters want to deliver great service. They want to get 5-star ratings from the customers on both sides of that.
That is, and it's just, to me, I'm just sitting here thinking, because I've had family in the logistics. Well, my best friend's dad was in the logistics company, so not family, close enough to family. And I know that filling the truck, the back load was always the most difficult part for them. And it has to be cost effective to run a business both ways, not just to the delivery, but you also have to get back to your depot. So you're helping people, to make money, but you're kind of helping people to make money on lots of different ways. One, you're helping the e-commerce supplier, but you're also helping that transport company, because a lot of those transport companies, they're individual contractors or franchisees. So we're talking the little guy quite often, even though they're part of a bigger organization.
Yeah, you're right. As that transporter, you want to keep your truck full as much of the time as possible. And that is where UShip Marketplace comes into play. So we actually have a new listing on our site every 20 seconds. And there are between 16 and 18,000 shipments in process at any one time. And if you look, we're probably moving goods in about 50 different countries today.
You do it
So
all over the world.
we are international in scope.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Predominantly we're North America, predominantly US, but there's a really neat tab on the UShip website called Find Shipments. And you can go and you could type in Australia, and it'll show you a map of what's being moved in Australia. And I hadn't pulled that up yet today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell me then, what are some of the challenges that we face as independent retailers when it comes, like, besides the obvious thing of, well, now you're giving us a service, so that the logistics part has now been conquered, and we've talked about the fact that the actual transport company will help to make sure that the delivery gets there. But I'm going to ask you what the challenges are for independent retailers, and I mean that more against the big companies.
Yep. So I really like that question a lot. And we feel a lot of passion here within our four walls about, we are looking to empower the independent retailers with the type of tools so they can stay competitive with the much larger big box maybe name brand, household name retailers. And logistics is one of those areas that can be very challenging and it can be very expensive. And so there's a couple things that we help retailers do. One of those is understand the price of what it costs to ship an item from A to B. You know, and a lot of times what a customer doesn't want to see in checkout is that they don't know how much it's going to cost, or they're going to have to figure it out off platform.
Biggest one of the reasons for an abandoned cart is if you don't know how much it's going to cost to get it.
Exactly. That's an express lane to an abandoned cart. The next challenge is going to be the time frame. And so if this is an item, so imagine it's a vintage dining room table. So some other research we have is that millennials today, who are driving a lot of the e-commerce trends in buying large and bulky, they actually prefer vintage furniture 2-to-1 over new furniture. But now you increase the challenges of shipping that item because it could be a dining room set that needs a lot of packing material. It doesn't show up in a nice box that's cleanly wrapped. And so your options oftentimes, sadly, would be calling up a moving company.
Yeah.
So that dining room set is at an antique store in Brooklyn and it needs to get to Chicago. If you were to call up a moving company, probably the best thing that would happen is they'd send a team out there to get that dining room set and they'd move it to Jersey City, where it would then sit in a warehouse until they could fill a full truck, a 53-foot truck going to the Midwest. And 8 weeks later, the customer in Chicago gets their dining room set. So the retailers, and that's again one of the reasons we exist, is we make it possible for those e-commerce merchants to connect with transporters who are ready and willing to back their truck up. It could be a Sprinter van, it could be a 15-foot box truck. They will load it in a very professional manner, and they're going to drive straight to Chicago. Maybe they'll pick up 1 or 2 items along the way, per your example, so that they're taking advantage of empty space. But the point there is making sure there's a good time frame for the customer. So again, as a retailer, make sure you understand that price up front. 2, work to deliver on time frames that we as consumers have now learned to expect. The third one is really good tracking of that item. There again, we as consumers, if we're not going to get it in 2 days, we know that we're going to be able to probably track its path. And that's been a real challenge on large and bulky. I think a lot of end consumers or retailers, once a big item's picked up, it just goes into the black hole of interstate transportation. So that's where technology can help. So we are able to provide the e-commerce merchant with a link that they can share with their customer. And in a majority of cases, many cases, they can track that package via the GPS in the driver's phone. And so that now as a consumer, you know what it's going to cost, you like the time frame, and you can track it so that you know your expectations are appropriate. Does that make sense?
It does. And I was actually going to ask you about time frame. That was my next question, but you already addressed it. Was the expectation that comes with, even next day Prime, Amazon Prime, next day delivery. Here in Australia, we have some fashion stores that do same day delivery if you're in a capital city, which is it's kind of mind blowing that we live in a society where someone will drive from one side of the city to the other to deliver you your latest pair of pants so you can wear them that night. But this is what technology has given us, and it's what we're coming to expect. And I think as independent businesses, we can often get caught out there because, like you said, with the moving truck example, once it leaves, it's no longer under your control, and you're at the mercy of everybody else. But you're the one who has to take responsibility because the contract the customer has is with you, not with the transport company. So it's really good to hear that once it gets on the truck, you can then continue to track it. And I don't know, as a customer, I'm okay with the non-instant gratification. I kind of like seeing where my parcel is because then it builds up the excitement. And if you can see that it's coming across the country and, it's due for arrival today, you just, I don't know. For me, it's the experience of having that, you get the rush for a bit longer. You get the rush when you buy the thing and then it's getting closer and then it actually turns up. So maybe I'm just strange.
Well, it's similar to that Airbnb experience in that you've read the ratings and the reviews, but it's that moment you walk into the property and you find that the owner has left you a 3-ring binder that if you need to order a pizza late at night, you can just turn to page 2 and you have it. It's that delivering on customer expectations by providing information. And again, it does go back to, I think, the ratings and reviews. So,
Yeah.
and you were talking about getting same day delivery from retail. That's fine. That's a great service. The transporters on UShip platform, though, we do contrast with those. Those are folks that come in and out of the workforce. You know, if I decide this weekend that I'm comfortable driving around, I could join up with one of those flexible type same day delivery services and I can fill my trunk.
Mm-hmm.
But the transporters that are delivering large and bulky for e-commerce retailers, this is what they do. They've made this their craft in life.
Okay, so talk to us about pricing, because it's all well and good to hear about this stuff and we talk about pricing, but then, and pricing is, you know, how long is a piece of string? But it's really, I don't know, it's one of those things where you get so excited when you hear about a new product. And I see this happen at trade shows, not to do with logistics, but you hear about this tracking that, you know, cross-platform tracking, and then someone says, and it's $7,000 a month. And you're right, that's just not in my price range. So how do you guys compare? Like, is it actually an affordable option, or is it more for the bigger, smaller businesses?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I would say we really want to make it possible for those independent retailers. And so if you're just getting out of your garage, even you're an artisan of some type of furniture item, we're a fine option for you. You're shipping once a month or 5 times a year. It's a fine option, and it's going to be affordable because you're tapping into this network of transporters that have capacity available. From a transaction model for e-commerce merchants, what they're able to do is control their costs based on, we provide the fixed pricing algorithm for what it's going to cost to move an item from A to B. E-commerce merchants have the ability, by the way, to either mark that up to a consumer, pass the cost on, or subsidize it.
Yeah.
But what we have found in our studies is that our network is able to move items from A to B and more economically than other means. And especially for that smaller retailer who isn't big enough to negotiate really good rates with the big trucking firms.
Yeah.
So we're matching these retailers as they're growing with high quality entrepreneurs and owner operators that they don't have to do long-term contracts. They don't have to do minimums to get a great rate. And so in our business model is a transaction fee. So so similar to really Airbnb, it's every stay, there's a transaction fee coming to us. So as that retailer starts to ship 100 times a month, 1,000 times a month, you know, we might talk to them and work with them about maybe there's a custom fee structure that makes sense. But certainly we're very transparent about what that fee is in order to connect with this transporter. And what we've been able to demonstrate and have been, you know, what's been validated is that the transport costs are better than what you can get otherwise. And you certainly can't buy a truck yourself or lease a truck and hire a driver. So there's no such thing as free shipping.
No.
Somebody's going to pay. But what you can fight for as a retailer is to really understand, what are you paying for? You know, what fees are going to that transporter, and is that a fair wage? What are the transaction fees in order to be able to access it? And then does it make sense with the business?
Okay, so we talked about things like fixed price and the algorithm. How do you actually connect UShip with your own individual website so that number doesn't have to manually be entered?
So help me understand that question again. Which number?
So I'm on a website and I see a 8-foot by 8-foot piece of artwork and I press buy and I need to get it to the other side of the country. How does the pricing get generated for the end customer? Yep,
exactly. So what happens is when you enter in in the US, it's enter in your zip code.
Yep.
Then it immediately, because we integrate with that e-commerce merchant through an API.
Okay, that was my question, is how do you
use your pricing service? Yep. And so we immediately send a price back to that retailer, and they usually have a little bit of logic. Hey, for this item, let's mark it up, let's pass it through, let's subsidize it, whatever that might be. You, the consumer, see that price in real time. So then when you swipe your credit card, that's when it then goes out to the transporter And then you receive the information via email of this is your delivery time frame. This is how you can track that item.
Okay. So as the retailer, not the consumer, when I'm now putting in my 8 foot by 8 foot piece of artwork, do I have to put some sort of spec in to make, because obviously you need to be able to generate a price. So you need to know the weight or the volume, or how does that, is it just you take that information from the e-commerce provider? So systems like Shopify, you would enter those details in, or do they have to come into UShip and put those in?
We pull that information in. So when we work with a retailer on the front end, we pull in those basic dimensions. But because we do have over 14 years of data, we're really good about how to price it. And typically we don't need it to the centimeter, but we general dimensions of what an item is, and we're able to provide that, plug that in for our algorithm to work in real time.
Right. Okay. I think that's pretty awesome because, I mean, when this one goes live, we will have just had Christmas. So I feel like we should have got you on a little bit earlier so we could have capitalized on Christmas, but it is never too late to actually start looking. Let's go with, it's a new year and you're going to get new inventory, and now you actually have the option to be bringing in stuff that you didn't think that you could have before because it was too big or you couldn't work out how to get it. Do you have any, like, I guess maybe your top 3 tips for retailers, for independent retailers, when it comes to big item logistics?
Yes. So tip number 1 is to consider, is your consumer going to be okay with receiving an item at the end of their driveway at the curb, or does your consumer want to have it delivered inside the home?
Oh yeah, that's important.
And so, retailers today, they do have an option to access what's called LTL, less than truckload shipping. And that can be a great service, but they're going to typically drop an item off at the end of your driveway. What we're able to do typically for that same price, or maybe even a little bit less, is the transporter you access via UShip will bring that item to your front door, set it up in your room of choice, remove all the packing material. And so that's first thing first. What do you want that experience to be upon receipt?
And I have to say that is, to me, super important, because as a brand, that is one of the things that scares me, even just about general postage, is that you have no control once it leaves the store, and you don't know what it's going to end up like. Is it going to be, swooshed and stood on and stuck out I had a parcel the other day left out in the rain. You have no control out of that. But having this option means that the customer experience of delivering it to the door probably means you can actually charge a little bit more, as long as you actually let the customers know that this is the level of service they're going to be getting.
Yeah. Well, I'll share an example with you. About 8 weeks ago, my CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and myself, we rented a 15-foot box truck. We left Austin at 7 a.m. on a Monday morning. We drove to Houston, did some pickups, to Dallas, ultimately up to Kansas City and over to Columbia, Missouri before coming back down. And in one instance, we picked up an antique dresser that had a mirror. And we picked it up. The mirror had been detached from the dresser. So we blanket wrapped it, we ratchet strapped it in our truck. And then we remembered to ask the seller, oh, hey, where are the screws for this mirror? And they said, oh, they're in the drawer. Don't worry about it. Now, keep in mind, we've already wrapped everything up. And so my colleague and I, we believed them. We're like, okay, they must be there. But the night before, thankfully, the night before we were going to deliver that dresser, we just thought, let's double check. So we unwrapped it, opened the drawer, and sure enough, there were no screws. And so here's the difference in the experience. If we worked for maybe a name brand trucking company and we had some supervisor at some home office somewhere, we know they'd be mad at us if we dropped this off without screws. But, are they going to fire us? Probably not. And you know what? That worker may just go drop off that dresser and window and there's no screws. Instead, because we know we're going to get rated by the customer on this shipment, before we had dinner that night, we went to a hardware store and we bought a box of screws. And so that when we delivered it that morning, we were able to offer up, hey, we can attach your mirror. In this case, the buyer didn't know where they were going to put it, so they didn't want to attach the mirror, but we had the screws there for them, and we got a 5-star rating. That's the kind of service, as well as the retailer. You want to make sure there's some kind of incentive for that experience, because it is maybe the customer's only time interacting with a human because they've been online, they've been looking at merchandise, and they've done everything electronically. But this is a point where that retailer's brand is dependent upon the experience. And that's where we really feel like the way these transporters are rated really drives value.
Yeah. So how often do you do that? How often do you get out there and actually put the customer experience to the test?
That was the first time we'd been out on the road to do pickups and deliveries. And, it made us certainly appreciate the plight of the transporter, what they deal with. It made us appreciate how grateful customers are with really good communication, text messaging primarily. Text messaging's preferred over phone calls.
Definitely.
But we found that consumers were very flexible with us as long as we communicated. If they needed to stay home a little later in the morning for an 8 to 9 a.m. delivery, that was fine, or 12 to 1, they could do a long lunch. But that was the first time we had done it. And what we're thinking about doing is actually getting a truck here at UShip. And then certainly for any new executive that joins, putting them out on the road for 3 days. We were doing it also to test the technology because we're mobile first. And so we wanted to make sure, could we do everything on the mobile device? And it was interesting, even for me, my first day, I was kind of on my laptop a little bit. And then by day 2 and day 3, we were 100% on our mobile device. And we wanted to make sure that if we had any gaps, we were surfacing those.
That's great. So before we finish up, any more tips? I think the biggest one is the customer experience. Like that, to me, that's number one.
Tips for retailers: think about that customer experience, which also includes, again, your time frames we talked about, and that ability to track the item. I think those are going to be the most important.
Yeah. And you just made me think then, we have a company in Australia called Appliances Online. And I love being the person who discovered them. We were using them when they were brand new and sort of 10 years ago. And they do the exact same thing. You order it and then you go to a calendar and you pick the day and the time frame that you want someone to turn up, and then they text message you. You can even pay at the door. They've got like a portable swipe card machine. They deliver it. They'll unhook your dishwasher and hook it up. They take the old one away. They take the packaging away. And anytime anybody wants an appliance, I'm like, you just have to go there. And they're actually the same price as everybody else, which is even better. So the customer experience for me, we have 57 stairs to our front door. So I always say, take a little bit extra for the fact that you had to carry up the stairs. And they always say, no, it's all part of the service. It's all part of the service.
That's great.
So that to me is the level of customer experience that I love to have. And it sounds like that is exactly what you guys are out there giving independent retailers the opportunity to give to their customers. So thank you so much for your service, because I didn't know that it existed. And if people are just sitting here going, I need that, where can they find you more about the product?
So there's a lot of resources at uship.com, uship.com. Lots of informational resources for retailers, for transporters as well, and everyone in between. And certainly, they can fill out a form, and we can reach out to folks directly to help walk them through this.
Fabulous. And even I think I saw on there that you had a holiday shipping guide.
Yeah, we just completed a survey. And what we found is that, customers tend to get quite stressed out during the holidays with their shipping.
Yeah.
A couple data points that jumped out at me is consumers, they graded last year's holiday shipping experience a B, but 48% of consumers graded it a B. But when you isolate on millennials and Generation Z, those consumers, 20% of them graded it a C. So millennials have higher expectations. And that is, those are the buyers of the future. And particularly, we talked about the audience is important that really does love vintage furniture. Yeah. And you certainly don't want to be the gift giver that when it's that morning to be able to benefit from the present, you don't want to have to print them out something from your computer that says, this is what was supposed to arrive.
Yes,
you don't earn points for that.
That happened to me with my husband 2 weeks ago with his birthday, and I ordered him a book 6 weeks ago and it didn't turn up, so I had to print out a picture of the book.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with me. I feel really empowered for my own clients that we now have a solution, because it's one of the things that we do talk about quite a lot, is how do we get those things like artwork and chairs and lampshades, always comes up, lampshades, to our customers when we don't have those contracts with logistics companies. So thank you for the app, but also, and the program, but also thank you just for coming on the show and sharing it with us.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for all you're doing. And again, I think our interests are quite aligned because, I don't want to wake up 5 years from now and only be able to buy a sofa from Amazon. It's really important to me that independent retailers are able to have tools that let them compete on a level playing field. And I know you provide a lot of great content and advice on that area. And to the extent we can be supportive, we're glad to be here.
Thank you. And thanks so much for being on the show, guys. If you're in the US and maybe in some other places around the world, head over to UShip and check out and see how they can help you. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.